Happy Saturday. It's June 7th, 2025, and you are listening to Morning Meeting. I'm Ashley Baker in London.
And I'm Michael Haney in New York City.
And we've got a little bit of everything in this episode of Morning Meeting for you. But first, Michael, the news. Trump is apparently a big cat man. Oh, yes. It turns out that his intellectual curiosity can, in fact, be piqued, as we saw during a recent trip to Saudi Arabia when he went gaga over some leopards. Now, what a surprise. A pair of rare Arabian leopards are headed to the Smithsonian as a gift from the Saudis. These are just the times that we live in. But in a bit of good news, a new 30-year study has proven what we all knew to be true already, which is that women who drink coffee really do age better. So sit down, pick up your 14th cup. Michael, let's get to it. As always, airmail is the antidote to it all.
Yeah, it's been a dramatic week in the war between Russia and Ukraine, with Ukraine making bold drone attacks deep on Russian soil. And this week, Katya, our airmail correspondent in Moscow, joins us to discuss the mood in Russia as Putin seems strangely suddenly vulnerable. Then, Oscar-winning actor Jared Leto has starred in films ranging from The American Psycho to House of Gucci. Now, however, he stands accused by 9 women of sexual impropriety. And our writer, Elena Clavarino, has her report. Then, speaking of strange behavior, everyone knows that if you're a foreign head of state and you're invited to the Oval Office, there's a pretty good chance that Trump is going to kneecap you in front of the press. Well, our colleague George Pendle has his report on how Africa's richest man actually did something impossible. Not only set Trump straight, but rendered him speechless. And finally, these are, as we all know, strange times, where you might be casting about for some kind of help, like someone who can cast a spell, Ashley. And our colleague, Gracie Weiner, has her report on why the popular crafting site Etsy has become the place for people to find a witch. That's right, a witch, and she'll explain it. So, Ashley, where would you like to begin today?
I don't even know where to start. Let's get Elena Clavarino on here to talk about Jared Leto. He's one of those characters who's been at least a figment of our lives for so many years, starting with his role as Jordan Catalano in My So-Called Life, which, Michael, I hear is one role he does not like to be reminded of. And yet, we have never heard too much about his love life, and that is all about to change. Elena Clavarino, a senior editor at Airmail, is here to explain why. Welcome, Elena.
Hi, good morning.
Elena, Michael and I were just talking about your incredible story before you came and joined us. And I was telling Michael how surprising I thought it was. And he said, yes, well, it's not that surprising at all. And that kind of sums it up. I mean, in many ways, Jared Leto is one of those actors and musicians and Hollywood personalities who's been hiding in plain sight for all these years. He's now in his 50s. We've never really heard much about him having a girlfriend. But as you reveal, he may have other tastes. Tell us a little bit about how this story came together.
So there's been obviously rumors circulating on the internet for some time, like, Reddit forums. Dylan Sprouse tweeted about Jared Leto liking young women in 2018. But the story came to me via this LA-based DJ who says she was assaulted by Leto when she was 17 at a concert. And basically, had posted about it on Facebook. And so when she heard about something occurring with somebody else, apparently, and so she decided to revive this Facebook post and posted it on her Instagram stories. And she got an overwhelming wave of responses about it. And so she reached out to me about potentially pursuing a story about it. And then one thing led to another, and I was connected to women who had similar experiences.
Let's talk first about the DJ. What is her version of events?
Her version of events is that she was 17 and approached by Leto at a concert in LA. And I think he came on to her and she said she had a boyfriend and that she wasn't interested. He then followed her to the elevator and told her he wanted to bring her home in quite a, according to her, aggressive way.
And what was the age? Of the 10 women that you spoke with, what did they have in common?
A lot of them met Leto when they're under 18, but none I would say, were over the age of 21 when they interacted with him. So they were all very young.
And did these interactions mostly happen in person, on the internet? Were there any patterns that you uncovered in your reporting?
Yeah, a lot of them happened in person. Maybe he'd lay eyes on, a woman he thought was attractive and, approach her, ask for her number. There are also parties being thrown at his house with Brent Bolthouse, who is an event organizer in LA behind the Neon Carnival parties during Coachella. And apparently at Jared's house, a lot of the women there were very also very young. And some were recruited from modeling agencies who sent over, busloads of women. And there were very few men at these parties, and the men were a lot older than the women.
Because until Leto, correct me if I'm wrong, I mean, he was so huge in the 1990s, right? He starred as Jordan Catalano in My So-Called Life, and that sort of propelled him into fame. And then he became sort of more known for his music, right? His band was called 30 Seconds to Mars, and that was the thing. And he had a bit of a fallow period, right, until his award-winning turn in Dallas Buyers Club. When was all this kind of going on, at least the activity that you have discovered?
It was happening in the 2000s, in that decade, throughout that decade, I would say, with everyone I spoke to. And he has his band, and he organizes a kind of retreat off the coast of Croatia on an island called Mars Island, where, again, a lot of the attendees are young women, and he wears a caftan and looks a bit like Jesus and breeches. He was accused of running a cult. It's all a bit bizarre.
I mean, it sort of seems like in many ways this story has been hiding in plain sight for such a long time. And I wonder if it's because a lot of the young women that Leto was allegedly targeting were underage, right? Somewhat disenfranchised. Like, these are not savvy social media users in their 20s or 30s or even 40s. These are teenage girls who one could presume are a bit starstruck, right?
Yeah, totally starstruck and, impressed that they were getting attention from this huge actor. And a lot of the interactions, I think, when you're very young, it can be quite ambiguous, like you don't really understand whether you're being treated properly or not treated properly. You're starstruck by the situation. You're excited about the situation. And then time passes and maybe you realize what happened was wrong. But at the same time, you try to cast it out of your mind and you think, maybe there's nothing I can do about this because the person is very famous. I think that's kind of what happened, at least through speaking with the women.
Elena, this is such an incredible feat of reporting, and we tip our hats to you for speaking to so many of these women and getting these stories out there. We encourage you to go read the piece in full, but thank you very much for joining us, and we look forward to the next.
Thank you guys so much.
Okay, Michael, things are looking like they're going to be very rocky for Jared Leto in the next couple of weeks as this news continues to break. In the meantime, though, things have already been rocky for Katya V, who's our correspondent in Moscow. She has been living with the war in Ukraine for the past 3 years, and she is here to update us on what things are looking like on the ground over there, especially as the Trump-Putin alliance continues to fracture. Welcome, Katya.
Hello, Ashley and Michael. I'm glad to be here with you today.
So how are things in Russia?
Things in Russia are unpredictable. We had this springtime of fantasy and adventure where many people really did believe in this dream of Donald Trump ending the war and moreover, ending the war on some very profitable conditions somehow, as if we won it. But we're not winning it, as everybody knows, I think. And the dream was not only about Russia winning the war, but also about Putin having a very powerful ally and Russia no longer being a pariah in the Western world. We have had a lot of attempts to build an international relationship, an alliance with China. And this winter and spring, Chinese parties in the Russian government were really struggling and at a little war for influence with American parties. But China really doesn't need Russia as an ally. They're just using us for resources. America has always been a dream country for Russia because of all the love-hate associated with the Cold War. And having Trump elected for the second time with all his promises to end the war was like a happy ending for many people. First, not everybody was so hopeful. I wasn't, for example. And second, now we see that probably that is not going to lead to anything.
Katya, how is Trump portrayed in the Russian media, and how has that portrayal evolved over the course of his presidency so far?
Oh, it is very ambivalent because there are a lot of Russian people who really like Trump. So Trump is, at most, I think he's sympathized with. He is painted like this figure of a bearer of truth, a prophet who is somehow with us. So many Russian people have this delusion of Trump being like a fan of Russia at all costs. But there are some radical patriots who think that putting hope into a non-Russian person can be bad as it is, but putting hope into Trump is a trap because he cannot be trusted. And they put all these examples of his words contradicting his actions, things like that. And people who want to trust him still like express frustration with the deal still not having been done. So it's more like, I don't know, they want him to save us, but then he doesn't save us. And everybody's like, oh.
And how is the war with Ukraine impacting your daily life in Russia right now?
Oh, well, it is impacting its every aspect. It has been for all those 3 years, but in like a very direct way, we have a lot of drone attacks, as many people know too, and we have them like everywhere. I live in Moscow, and Moscow has been having these drone attacks for, I don't know, more than a year and a half, maybe more. But this spring, they have become more abundant. They have become like really constant. And now we also had these sneak attacks on military airplanes in the middle of Russia, in Irkutsk, for example, which is like, it's really, really far away in Asia. And also the railroad bridge in Bryansk, which is closer to the Ukrainian border, was attacked. Some people died there. And we had the Crimean bridge attacked too. I think it was just yesterday. So like news like that, they're really everywhere. And moreover, sounds of drones crashing are sometimes like under your window. So it's harder and harder to ignore that there is war. That there are times, and there were times during this 3-year period when Russian people could really just pretend to go on with their lives. But now it's not an easy thing to do.
And we've been hearing murmurs about these crackdowns of intellectuals, right, at publishing houses in Russia. You touch on that in your column this week. What's going on there?
We are having like tours of government oppression. And this is like a new one, a whole new level of oppression. We're now having people literally facing real sentences in jail for selling books that were prior to that legally published in Russia. And these are just books like, I don't know, history of gay people in the USSR, things like that. I read this book on my uni curriculum at a queer studies course, I think in like 2018. It was recommended by the Moscow State University. And now it is banned as much that people who just sold it, well, they were asked to do that. There were special agents dressing up as regular clients that wanted to buy the book. So now people that sold the book and the likes of it are under house arrests. They are going to face charges of extremism. It does really sound grim because it's not just like 3 people from a major publishing house under a threat to become prisoners for like just doing their job, basically publishing and selling books. But it's also all bookstores are getting those lists of banned books, book fairs, just internet resources. Like everybody tries to add more censure, sometimes to add like self-censure even before anybody asks you for that. Because you know that in that case, which I've been telling you about, we call it the editor's case, there was no list of banned literature. People just had to guess which books they should not have sold anymore. So the oppression in this country in many ways works exactly like that. You have to guess. And because of that guessing, many projects are just put on hold in the very beginning. Many things in art and culture and in business are just not done because everybody is in fear.
Katya, you speak, about the drone attacks as well. And is there a feeling, obviously there's a vulnerability feeling, and is there a feeling that Putin has ever got any more, that he's not so all-powerful? Does that impact him at all, these drone attacks?
Oh, that is so tricky because our government just does not address any of this. We're having drone attacks and we just should be silent about it. And we just don't get any explanation from our authorities.
Katya, we've read so many reports that Putin is ill and that his time in power may be limited. Those have sort of faded away in recent months. Are you hearing anything along those lines, or does it seem like you all are going, and all of us as well, are going to be living with this guy forever?
Well, to be honest, I do harbor the ambition to live after him, really. I hope, but I'm 29, so probably I have some grounds to be hopeful. Yeah, there are a lot of rumors that he's ill. There are a lot of rumors about possible diagnosis. I'll probably, without preparation, not be able to say which diagnoses are more often addressed to him. But even if he is ill, which probably is part of the truth, there are illnesses with which you can live for a long time. Probably it will not be a good quality living, but nobody says that Putin has a good life. I don't think that he is actually dying right now, because that would be like thinking that Trump is going to win the war for us. Wishful thinking, people call that.
Well, Katya, thank you so much for your report and for having the bravery to share all of this with us. We appreciate that you're living in a very dangerous environment.
Thank you so much for reading and listening to me. Have a good day.
Thank you.
I wish we could stop our conversation about Trump right then and there, but unfortunately, the man continues to persevere. But in past weeks, one brave soul has stepped up and put Trump in his place, at least somewhat, and it was someone that no one expected. George Pendle, one of our colleagues at Airmail and a deputy editor here, will explain. Welcome, George.
Hello.
Well, George, at least one good thing has happened recently, which is that someone actually managed to put Donald Trump in his place. And it was not Elon Musk, and it was not Vladimir Putin, but in fact, it was a South African billionaire who was behind some of our favorite watches and jewelry brands. Explain exactly what happened.
Well, yes, it was during Trump's Oval Office ambush of Ramaphosa and the South African delegation when he showed them a video, claimed that there was white genocide going on in South Africa, was showing all these printouts that actually had nothing to do with South Africa at all, and basically declaiming that the president sitting in front of him was responsible for all these white deaths. And it seemed at one point that the South African delegation just couldn't stop Trump on his rant. He was spouting out these incredible facts, or rather fictions, when suddenly from behind Ramaphosa, you can see it on the actual TV feed, a large, stocky man stepped forward in a blue suit and said, look, the thing is, black people are dying as well as white people. Nothing's good. And he basically, poured oil on the waters of Trump's turbulence. He basically slapped Trump down and said, very matter-of-factly, this isn't just a white thing, it's a black thing. South Africa is in trouble, but, we can fix it with investment from the United States. And what was remarkable was that Trump was sitting there kind of nodding his head and agreeing. And it's very rare to contradict Trump and have him remain silent. But I think the reason for this was that the person who stepped forward was Johan Rupert, who is, by all accounts, the richest man not just in South Africa, but in all of Africa. He's Afrikaans luxury goods magnate. And although he's kind of reclusive, he only really pops up during, AGMs for his luxury goods Richemont. He appeared here on camera for pretty much the first time. And I think a lot of people missed his appearance. They didn't really realize he was there. But he's a very interesting figure. And I think, you can see the interest in him because Trump actually listened to him.
And why exactly does he have any sway at all over Trump?
Well, I think there are a number of reasons. One, as opposed to the rest of the South African delegation, he was white. And I think, it was pretty obvious from the meeting in the Oval Office that Trump really was quite disdainful of any of the South African delegation who were black. But aside from that, he's also richer than Trump. He's possibly an inch or two taller than Trump. And also he plays golf. And as we know by now, there is this kind of, weird factor in Trump's mind whereby anybody who knows about golf and plays golf raises themselves up a kind of step in his estimation. But those are some of the kind of little reasons. But a large part of the reason is that Rupert for years has been this kind of astonishing head of a luxury goods firm of Richemont, which includes Cartier, Alfred Dunhill, Montblanc. These are all, great brands under the Richemont umbrella. And Rupert has really just been not as well known as Bernard Arnault at LVMH. He's often referred to as kind of the Warren Buffett of South Africa, but he doesn't have that same cult of the personality that Buffett does. He's this, he's an enigmatic figure. He stays away from the public view, but what he does do is he knows everybody in the world from, Dubai to China to America. He is there constantly on the golf course, kind of putting together meetings, arranging deals. He's the quintessential, modern transatlantic, international billionaire.
Well, first of all, he has a fascinating backstory, right? Tell us a little bit about his coming of age in South Africa.
Yes. Well, Rupert is Afrikaans. He's descended from one of the, the Dutch settlers in South Africa, which, who date back to the 17th century. And he's a proud Afrikaner. And, if anybody, about apartheid, when blacks and whites were separated by law in South Africa, apartheid started under an Afrikaans-led government. Now, you think this would make, Rupert a terribly suspect figure, but actually he and his father, Anton Rupert, were one of the few Afrikaners who spoke out against apartheid. Admittedly, they made a lot of money during apartheid, but they were constantly trying to help the black communities, trying to bring down apartheid, because they saw it essentially, as bad for business. There was a phrase which Johann Rupert's father coined, which was, if they don't eat, we don't sleep. And it was this idea which, at the time was quite radical, but the idea that black and white communities in South Africa were linked. You couldn't separate them. They were conjoined together. And so Rupert grew up, with this, for South Africa, an incredibly liberal mindset. He edited an anti-apartheid edition of his student newspaper at university. And when apartheid ended in 1990, Nelson Mandela himself, asked Rupert to be part of the committee which was forming the new constitution of South Africa. And Rupert himself, I think one of his most prized possessions is a letter from Mandela in which Mandela calls him his son. And he really stands for that. He's a white Afrikaner billionaire, which obviously, makes a lot of people think one thing, but he's incredibly pro-South Africa and pro, bringing the country together and improving it. As with apartheid, which he, struggled against, he and his father struggled against, he thought it's better for everyone if we have a society that works together. And you could kind of see it in the Oval Office in a little way. Trump is desperately trying to divide and split black against white. And Rupert came forward and said, no, we're all suffering here. We are all one nation. And I think, that speaks to his, the kind of remarkable character of the man that, despite all these years, he's still desperately trying to help the country from which he's born and for which his, the Afrikaners in general were responsible for kind of really hurting for a long time. And I think what he did in the Oval Office, it was an example, it was a chance for him to say, look, I could easily say, I'm white, I'm Afrikaans, yes, we're suffering murders, but he didn't. He actually took the side of the black majority and said, and took the side of South Africa and said, no, your facts are wrong, Trump. This is what's actually going on.
Well, George, thank you so much. Wonderful story.
Thank you.
All right. Well, Michael, we should probably add a bit of levity to this situation, although I don't know if witches actually classify. But our social media editor, Gracie Weiner, takes us inside the universe of TikTok and explains why people are relying on witches of all things to make sense of the world and help us with a better outcome. You heard it here first. Witches, they're the new prayer. Welcome, Gracie.
Hi, how are you?
Great. Thank you so much for joining us.
Of course. This is so exciting. My morning meeting debut.
Yes. So Gracie, it turns out that witches are back in fashion. It's like Halloween in June over here. What's going on?
Yes, on Etsy, the global marketplace known for, I mean, personally, it's where I buy vintage pieces and jewelry, but people buy, crochet pieces on there. There are witches thriving over there. And I found out about it via TikTok because people are buying love spells and curses and hexes. And it's kind of all the rage right now, especially after a recent wedding. So recently, an influencer named Jazz got married and her wedding was forecasted as rainy because that's all we've had recently in New York. And she decided to take matters into her own hands and she contacted a witch on Etsy and ordered a perfect weather spell. And the weather turned out to be beautiful and sunny and blue skies over Memorial Day weekend. She said, was this a coincidence? Was it the world changing the weather or was it my witch working? And so now it's kind of the conversation of the moment.
I mean, I'm going to date Michael and I, but if you wanted to dabble in the supernatural back in our time, you used to go to employees only and get your tarot cards read or like pop into some random psychic's office on 7th Avenue. And now these people are living online in a forum where, frankly, I used to just go to buy spare fabric. Like, why did they end up on Etsy of all possible places? What is it about Etsy shoppers that says, these people might be interested in also procuring the services of a witch?
So Etsy is really easy to sign up on. It just takes a few clicks, but it's also against the rules on Etsy. They have a strict no metaphysical service rules. So people are signing up, even though it's against the service is allowed. I don't think it's strongly enforced. And it's easy to list various things and search. It comes up on Google searches and it's easy to share. And you can have various prices listed. It's really user-friendly, easy to contact people, easy to find it. And from a service standpoint, it's really approachable and it doesn't feel like you're doing anything shady necessarily. And you can just open up Etsy, type in love spell and find one. I mean, I saw one on sale for 75% off for $250. I don't know if I'd want a discount spell, but you can get it and get a spell from there. But it makes it feel more approachable, less serious. You can do it from your phone. You don't have to contact anyone. So I don't know if there's a harm in it or not. There was a few spells I saw that said, this is blood work, you're selling your soul. Those ones were $50,000. So again, if you're going to spend $50,000 on a witch, I would recommend doing it in person, but it takes out the face-to-face. But there does raise a question of being scammed.
You think?
Yeah, definitely. And, in my article, I tell the story of a recent TikTok that someone posted also over Memorial Day weekend, where a girl came to TikTok a little bit hysterical saying, I ordered a love spell, which I see so many of you guys posting about, and the witch told on me. I told her the name and the birth date of the guy who wanted to fall in love with me, and she found him on Instagram and DM'd him and told him exactly what I wanted and told on me. And so that seems like an unethical witch. People were calling WIPA violations. There's no code of conduct. Maybe there is for some witches, but anyone can join. I had a friend tell me recently she's thinking about doing it because it's so low bar.
I mean, I'm just sort of tempted to go, what's that Bette Midler movie, Michael? Hocus Pocus? Like, there's something kind of quaint and vintage about all of this, no?
Yeah, but come on, it's kind of like, you've got Hocus Pocus or like Elizabeth Montgomery and Bewitched on one hand, and then you've got, Rosemary's Baby on the other side of this. Like, I don't know. There's no enforcement, and also, like, who knows? You're going to get the real satanic witch, and it's all bets are off then.
Yeah, personally, I'm a little hesitant because of karma and what may come back to me. You never know how a spell actually may work. I read a lot of fairy tales growing up.
So you've never done one of these, Gracie?
No, I have not done it. I'm a little bit of a cautious person because I'm like, I just don't want anything coming back to me. I'm afraid if I order a hex or a curse, something will come back to me. I had friends who have had successes, which is good for them. And I think people are turning to this because a lot of my friends I'm 30, a lot of my friends aren't religious. If I have a friend who's going to church or a religious institution, they're kind of a bystander in my life. And I think this kind of is replacing prayer, and it's asking a higher power for something to happen in your life, asking for an outcome. I think, people are desperate at this time. Things seem a little unexplainable and are looking for anything to make sense. And, I think the normal routes aren't making sense. And we're kind of just hoping for something, whether it's in the normal route or not.
All right. Well, may the force be with you. I'm doing the head nod right here. The bewitched
Thank
nod.
you. Yes, you too.
The nose, Ashley. I Dream of Jeannie did the head nod.
Oh, sorry. It's the nose.
A lot of magical thinking. I Dream of Jeannie, Bewitched. It's like different but just clarifying.
Yeah, Buffy, Sabrina.
God, there's so many of them. Okay, fine.
Yes, I'll let you guys know if I order one and what the outcome is.
Nothing for me, thank you. Don't make me the
Michael and
recipient or the
no
victim,
thanks.
please.
No.
Gracie, please no spells on Michael and I. And thank you so much for this great story.
Thank you. I hope you have a great day.
There's only one place to discover a global snapshot of the current cultural scene. Airmail's Arts Intel Report. Our international research tool for what to do and where and when to do it is user-friendly, continuously updated, and meticulously curated. Arts Intel is handy at home, on the road, and when you're planning your next trip. It also includes indispensable lists of restaurants and hotels in key cities around the world, recommended by our well-traveled experts. Explore Arts Intel at airmail.news/arts-intel, and be sure to sign up for our Week in Culture newsletter, which is published every Wednesday afternoon at airmail.news/WIC. I'm Chris Garrett, Airmail Deputy Editor, and I never leave home without it. Bon voyage.
Okay, Michael, on that note, we are releasing you to the weekend. But first, please recommend something enjoyable and cultural.
You were a fan of Succession, right?
Do you know me?
Okay, of course. Leading the Witness. Have you seen the creator of Jesse Armstrong? He did this movie that came out a week or so ago called Mountainhead. Have you seen it yet?
No, but I would love to.
It's on HBO or Max, whatever they're calling it these days. They're apparently switching the name back and forth. And it stars Rami Youssef, Corey Michael Smith, Steve Carell, and Jason Schwartzman. And this is kind of a hurry-up picture that Jesse Armstrong did after Succession. And it tells the story of these 4 billionaires who go to Mountainhead, a retreat, and sort of all to sort of luxuriate in their coolness and their money, and things kind of go sideways from there with them. So I had, like anyone coming off Succession, high expectations for what Jesse Armstrong was going to do next, and it's good, but it's sort of like these eat the rich satires that sort of get, whether it's like Triangle of Sadness or Glass Onion or even White Lotus, they seem to be piling up, and there's some very good moments in it, but I was a little disappointed by it in some ways, and maybe my expectations were out of line. But, I'd still recommend watching it. I'd love to know what you think, Ashley. It's called Mountainhead, and it is on Max right now. So we'll go from there. And you, my dear, what do you have?
Well, have you been watching Sirens on Netflix?
Sirens? No.
Okay, this is about 2 sisters who come from a very middle-class background who find themselves enmeshed through one way or the other into the world of the extremely wealthy on an island that is very reminiscent of Nantucket. Michael, how have you not seen this? It co-stars Megan Fahey and Julianne Moore.
Oh, I've seen the trailer for it. Yes, Megan Fahey. Speaking of White Lotus, she was in that, right? Season 2?
I find her so compelling as an actress. I love her. As you know, I saw that ridiculous thriller caper film that she was in recently, the name of which I've already forgotten. But I think she's great in this. It's a really fun show. It's sort of for those of us who are, suffering in 50-degree cloudy weather here in London, it's a really fun summer escape. And I just love it. It's absurd. It is not high quality programming, but that is just fine. And then the new season of And Just Like That is also back. And in Just Like That, I am also watching it. So I am not here for your highfalutin cultural recommendations this week, Michael, but I will aim to do better. Well, on that note, we wish you all a marvelous weekend. And thank you for joining us as always. Michael, will you please read us out?
Morning Meeting is produced by Airplay Productions and edited by Jesse Cannon. Our co-editors are Graydon Carter and Alexander Stanley. Our chief operating officer is Bill Keenan, and our deputy editors are Ashley Baker, Chris Garrett, Nathan King, Julie Vitale, and Ash Carter. Our CMO is Emily Davis, and our music supervisor is Randall Poster. The theme music is The Cute Monster by the Buddy Cloet Quintet. A new edition of Airmail is published every Saturday, so please subscribe and enjoy all of our stories on airmail.news, which we update every day. You can also find us on Twitter and Instagram at Airmail Weekly. We will be back here next Saturday with another edition of Morning Meeting, but in the meantime, be sure to subscribe at Spotify or Apple Music. But most of all, thank you again for joining us.